Overseas Chinese and the Chinese family business. I have one student wrote a paper on this second topic, Chinese family business. This is a paper from one student, and it's talking about exploring entrepreneurial familyism in Hong Kong and mainland China, second generation family entrepreneurs. The original family members have started to change. The second generation went abroad and started to come back. So what this is saying in one PhD student's paper that I've got to judge is he believes the idea of Confucianism still remains but has changed significantly, as we talked about. No longer do you have to have the oldest son running things. No longer do you have to have the family members running things. Now, you use world technology and world communications and access to everybody in the world, and you can get somebody to work for you. You can still keep control within your family and just pay somebody else to run it for you. Does that seem strange? If you think it's strange, you should be thinking about corporate governance. If you think the idea of not letting somebody, for example, why would you work for a company that's not going to give you a lot of the ownership of the company? That's how almost every company in the world works in the Western world. A CEO is just somebody that other people have hired, right? The investors, like you, gave them crazy amounts of money, lots and lots of money, and the board of directors supposedly, technically, theoretically, used your money to hire whoever was the best. The Chinese are doing the same thing, but they can keep the ownership control within the family. They're just paying them quite a lot. So let's talk about how we're doing this and why it's important. 2013, list of Fortune Global 500 companies. Right off the bat, you should understand that it has changed from what's most popular. Most popular, people talk about just the Fortune 500. And when they talk about the Fortune 500, most people say it's the world's biggest companies. Well, that's wrong. Because the Fortune anything usually is made by Americans focused on the American view, thinking their country is best, just like Koreans think Korea is best, just like Chinese think Chinese are best. This is different. It's talking about the global companies. So at least they're starting the check outside. However, they might still have difficulties because they can't see or read some of these foreign languages. So who are they? In 2013 list of the biggest global companies, 89 are Chinese companies. 73 were the world's biggest companies last year. 61 2 years ago. 34 in 2008. There is a trend. The Chinese or East Asian companies, these are just focused on Chinese now. The Chinese companies are growing. And a lot of people say how they valued what is good is biased. For example, they will say profits. That is definitely biased. Anybody that knows some of the accounting understands that if you are the CEO of a company and you sell something and you pay for your expenses, you have a lot of profit, you should be using that profit to invest in your company. Otherwise, you lose that money in taxes. It just depends on how much you want to take that profit and invest it back in the business. So some of these studies are biased. Anyway, 3 of the Chinese corporations in the top 10 are Sinopec. Anybody know what Sinopec is? Come on. Start to realize it's, we'll talk about it in a little while. It's related to all of them. All of them are related. They're all basically energy companies. China National Petroleum in 2012 was ranked 5. 2011 it was ranked 6. It's growing. The State Grid of China has been ranked 7 both of the last years. And these are the revenues. Sinopec has what's this? $428 billion. And China National Petroleum has $408 billion in revenue versus the straight grid, almost $300 billion in revenue. These are getting pretty big. The huge state corporations, these are quotes from Forbes magazine. The huge state corporations have adopted the financial techniques of their international competitors and raised billions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. But these companies are not autonomous corporations. I think this is comments coming from a Western biased view, thinking that the West is the best and anything outside of their country might not be the best. And so they're saying, I don't know if it's accurate or not, you can judge, they're saying that they're hardly said to be corporations at all. Their senior management, and indeed the fate of the corporation itself, is completely dependent on their political patrons. Is that true? How do you get to be a powerful person in China? Who are the most powerful people in China? Generally, the most powerful people in China are the top government officials. How do you get to be a top government official? Usually you are selected through the organizing department. And the organizing department sees that you need to be able to show a history of running many other organizations or communities or cities or provinces. And almost all of the top people have been managing something like 100 million people or more prior to getting into these big situations, these big positions. So they have shown this. It's basically a merit-based system, just like we say in the United States. It's just decided in a different way. Second, the government mandates that ever-changing business rules undermine the ability of Chinese corporations to innovate and adapt to new business models. What I see this as saying is that the government changes all the time. Well, isn't that good? They try something, every country in the world tries what they think is good, and they realize if it's wrong, they have to do something else. Weapons of mass destruction are in Afghanistan or Iraq. We've got to go after those. We're confident about it. A couple days later, or even prior to that day, some people already know that's not correct, but they did it anyway. So governments change everywhere. China changes, every country's government's going to be changing. It just so happens that the democracy governments change generally very, very regularly, a lot. Third, Chinese corporations have yet to develop a modern capitalistic mindset. That's interesting when we just went through saying some of the world's biggest companies have the highest growth, the highest profit, the highest revenue. Next, fourth, China is yet to create a clear, transparent accounting system that will assure investors that corporate numbers are what they appear to be. I know some of you want to be accountants. Is there a great accounting system anywhere in the world? Is there any accounting system that is 100% perfect? A lot of people would say one of the biggest, best companies in the world is Apple Computer. But they somehow mysteriously forget that last month, the month before that, and for several years, Apple has also been the head of corporate governance fraud accusations. Why? Because they're making so much money, they funnel it through tax loopholes and they don't pay all of the tax on it. It goes through Ireland and then all of a sudden, mysteriously, they have no more taxes to pay. So if we're just saying China does not have a clear, transparent accounting, now that might be true, but I don't know anywhere that's better. Bottom line, Chinese corporations are becoming bigger enterprises but have yet to gain the clout and the respect of their American, European, and Japanese peers. Well, if we just look at the first part, Chinese corporations are becoming bigger, but they're not powerful like American and European companies. Any guesses as to why? I hope you're starting to realize that viewing the world requires a view of values. And to understand values, you must understand culture. How many people here would think it is smart to go in front of any powerful person in East Asia and say, I've got this degree, I've got this certificate, I can do this and this and this and this and this. I am the best at this. How many people could do that or should do that in East Asia? Generally, no one. Everybody knows that bragging is generally stupid, number one, and number two, it's hurting the image of other people, and you're basically insulting people around you. So you're supposed to be humble and go in and say that you don't really know anything, but you are very lucky to work with these other experts, which secretly means you know these secrets too. You know these things, but you're saying all of the good things are on these other powerful people. That's the way a lot of humble people think. So they don't go around bragging, saying they're the best. I asked if you knew what Sinopec was. It's one of the biggest companies in the world, with the most staff almost in the world. And some of the companies that have the most staff in the world, you probably do not know of. That doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that they're not bragging about it. Is that bad? No. I think as soon as you start to brag about it, you're going to have these jealous people starting to attack you, looking for problems. So the companies that are saying they're the best, the ones that you hear about, are not necessarily the best. Don't invest your life on some company just because you've heard a lot about it in the news, or you've heard a lot of people talking about it, unless you know the facts. Huge state corporations have adopted, these are more quotes from Forbes. Huge state corporations have adopted the financial techniques of their international competitors and raised billions of dollars. Basically, this is the same thing that I was talking about. Where's the other one? Sorry, here's the beginning of what Sinopec is. Global rank number 4 in the world. Revenues of $428 billion. Stockholder equity, what does that mean? It has people investing in it, and there's $100 billion of stockholders. CEO is this guy. Employees, 1 million employees. Surprise, surprise, something that you might still need to know, its headquarters are in Beijing. Any comments about that? Do you think it's good to be headquartered in Beijing? What is good and what is bad about doing business in Beijing? It's the capital city. A lot of international companies are based there, which means you can network with a lot of other valuable people in other corporations. Yes, and it's easy to get the networks and the relations with the high government officials. Yes. So being based in Beijing is very important, but what might be another better strategy? What would be an alternative location to do your business?
Nowhere.
The middle of, yes, the middle of nowhere. The politically correct word. Why? Because almost everybody knows that no matter where you are, every country wants to develop the middle of nowhere. There's too many people in the big cities. We want to develop the middle of nowhere. So if you are starting to develop in the middle of nowhere, like Hyundai did in Canada, and they got the factory and the land and the workers for $1, you should do that. Because the government will give you a lot of help and support to do that. So, yes, anybody want to try to name a city or a region of China that is the middle of nowhere? Maybe we shouldn't say that. We're not supposed to say anybody's a bad place. Any place is a bad place. Number 2, China National Petroleum, global rank number 5 in the world, ranked 6 the previous year. Obviously, they're very, very big. Based in Beijing, they have 1.6 million employees. Again, another Chinese CEO. Number 3, ranked 7 in the world. They have less than a million employees based in Beijing. I believe this is still a Chinese CEO. But if you look closely at the revenues and the profits, wow, profits, 117% profit. What's your remark when anybody says it's not a well-managed company? I think as soon as you start saying you have 117% profit, I could say it's not properly managed, but it's for the opposite reasons. I would say it's not properly managed only because they should be taking that profit and putting it back into expanding their business, not giving so much to tax. It's the opposite of what North American companies usually say. Profit means it's run well. How many companies do you know that are in North America or in Europe that have 117% profit? Profit, not margin. Let's look at the first ones again. This one, profit of the biggest one was minus 13%. That's more realistic. But however, their revenue grew 14% with Sinopec. Next one, China National Petroleum, they grew 16%. That is above average in the stock market. It's the biggest company almost in the world. You should be able to find it pretty easily. And it's making higher growth than almost the average of every company in North America on the stock market. Looks like a pretty good investment there, especially when they're getting profits of 11.5%. This one, the same, 15% growth in revenue and 116% profits for the state grid. That's pretty impressive. It looks to me like technically, theoretically, academically, in simple form, that might be a good investment. Number 4, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. So far, the first ones we talked about were all energy companies. Here's just the first bank. Banks, what is their business style? What are they managing? They're just managing an idea. What is money? Money doesn't really exist, right? How did this start? Where did it start? This started in China, right? Paper money was invented basically in China. Why? It's actually, in some ways, not practical. What happened before this? You had something of value, and somebody else had something of value. You just wanted to exchange. You thought it was worth this. But then if you left this at home and you wanted this, you just wrote down on a paper, I will give this to you later. That's how money developed. Basically, they're not doing anything. They're just taking ideas back and forth. You write an IOU note or you write a contract with somebody, you might not need a bank. What is some of the biggest competitors to banks nowadays? Anybody know what Bitcoin is? What is Bitcoin? Okay, who hasn't taken my class in the last semester? Mac, you are sort of an accountant. Money is pretty important. Do you know what Bitcoin is? No, good. Great example. So this is money. What if I told you this is run by for example, I don't want to be in trouble for defamation. What if I was to tell you the concept of this? I can't rip it on camera because that's illegal for who knows what reason, but it's corrupt, it's criminal. There's no way for you to really benefit in this. Why? What happens if you want it, the government gives it to you? Well, is it fair? The government, if they want more, they just open the button, turn the lights on in a factory and print more. That's what's happening in many parts of the world. So, if I told you this is gone tomorrow, is there an alternative? Yeah. It's already started to disappear in some areas. A lot of people are convinced, 100%, the concept of cash is gone. We have technology. I won't put you on the hot seat. The answer is Bitcoins. People know that everybody in the world is connected with the internet now. And they know that if I can be connected with you, there's a way that I can have value with you. So people are just starting to invest in the idea. It's only an idea of value. I have something of value, I'll trade you of something of value. That's called a Bitcoin. And now you can go and take these Bitcoins and go into many businesses and get products for it. And you don't have to worry about the taxation from government. You don't have to worry about the government turning on a factory making more. You're based on 100% value, called Bitcoin. So now that I said that, yes, banking companies, insurance companies, they're usually the most profitable in the world. It's usually pretty easy money if you want to head that way. How much money do they make? They're making $133 billion and they have 400,000 employees. Anybody want to do the math? Each employee makes how much money? What is a normal salary? A normal salary in Korea is $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 is normal. If you get more than that, you're very lucky. So if $20,000, $30,000 a year is normal, how much should these employees be getting if they take all of the revenues, divide it by the number of employees? I worked for Applied Materials before, and in general, we hired workers, we fired workers based on that answer. If the company was making this much revenue, we were allowed to have this many staff. If we started making this much revenue, we had to have only this much staff. One year we hired 547 staff. A few years later we fired hundreds of staff, just following the sales revenues. Generally, every person working was making more than $1 million in sales. Company number 5 in China, China's 5th biggest company, Hanhai Precision Industry, global rank number 30. Revenues $132 billion, profits are there, assets are there, stockholder equity, how much the investors are there, employees 1.29, headquarters in Taiwan. China Construction Bank, wow, now there's an interesting business. I love real estate. Buying a property, getting somebody to rent that property is equal to some other family or some other person is automatically paying directly for your retirement. At least half of all rent is paying for you to retire. Most people think you have to pay for your own retirement. They forget about this. So getting into construction, getting into real estate, getting into banking, there's a pretty good business. Their growth, 17% for profit, 26.5% overall in revenues. More importantly, this slide is very important. Before I talk about it too much, we started talking about culture. We started talking about values. I think you guys have a lot of potential. And I know your value, your culture is generally you don't brag. Generally you're obedient in some sense, except when I say do all this homework and stuff like that. But your culture is different than other cultures in the sense that you don't brag as much as others. Are Chinese, compared to Korea, do Chinese people brag more or less? Let's say you're an international tour group. Which group will have the fancier name brands and the bigger luxuries to look at? China? You think so? Generally, Korea is world famous for having the most image recognized brands, the Louis Vuitton bags and the name brand clothes and stuff like that. If you go into, let's not say Korea, because Korea is 98% just Korean people, but let's say we go into some place in Europe or some place in North America, into a big organization. If you were to guess the ancestry of the janitor, where do you think the janitor comes from? We're being terrible now, we're stereotyping. It's a terrible thing and it's just a bad joke. We all know it might not be true, but what is this stereotypical janitor for a huge corporation? Which nationality? French people are janitors? That's news to me. Maybe for some people, you might have been living in a very interesting environment for a while. I'm part French, it's news to me. Would you not agree that it is possible to think that Chinese people are associated with being quiet? Chinese people are associated with taking the job at the back of the room. Chinese people are associated with just doing the quiet, simple work. You don't always see in big corporations people running around saying something that guy's Chinese. versus the guy that is saying they're the biggest and the best is probably the French, or more specifically European, or even more specifically North American. So if Chinese people are considered janitors, and a lot of people would say the maids or the nannies are Philippine people, we are educated. We know that's not always true. Why would you think Chinese people would want to be considered quietly? Why would they not want to be considered? Is there any reason? Is there any reason that you think of? Why don't you want the world to know you're rich? Why don't you want everyone to know you are powerful? Any idea? Yes?
Maybe people don't like other people sticking to them like leeches after you're running.
Leeches. If you tell everybody that you're super rich, yes, as we found out academically, we will have leeches coming to take our money away. Yes, that's a problem. And the government will probably inspect you more, thinking they can get more taxes from you. And you'll have the poor people that are jealous saying that you're a terrible person because everybody's supposed to be fair. Yes. Automatically there will be headaches just from that image. So what are the benefits? Why would you want to tell everybody you're the richest? Why do you actually want to show you have a $10,000 purse? Apart from dating, maybe. Which I still don't understand, because if I married my wife because she was driving a very, very old Hyundai Sonata. I thought that was cool. A businesswoman driving an old car, it was just practical, I liked it. So what are some of the advantages of having these big name brand things? We're going against marketing right now. Any comments? They treat you differently. Okay.
People think they're like, I mean, the companies like Samsung, I'm not, no offense, but we think they're like good, powerful companies because of their name value.
You think name value equals power. So you want to show name value. We've got a couple of people going crazy. Yes? One of you?
I think invest.
Okay.
They can have more partnership.
Another support for this. I grew up in a rich family. I'm not bragging now. This is, the end of the story is, I remember when I just started university when I was 15, my father told me, Sean, are you okay? Are you healthy? Yes, good. You're not going to get another dime. He wasn't going to give me another 10 cents for the rest of my life. I was like, wow, shock. He's a multimillionaire. I get nothing. Gee, nice family. However, the story is that he used to like walking around in his underwear. He used to like walking around in old ripped t-shirts that he found comfortable. He didn't see the point of buying all these fancy brand name shirts all the time. He had a shirt, he liked it, he wore it. He had shoes he loved, he bought Eddie Bauer, which is a brand name, but it's not for image. Most people don't know the image of Eddie Bauer. It's because anything from Eddie Bauer, or especially Tilly's, you could use it forever. If it ever broke down or ever ripped, take it back to the company, they will give you a new one. He had shoes that he wore for 10, 15 years. If it started to have a problem with it, he'd go back in, they'd give him a new set 15 years later after using it every day. So he didn't look the fanciest. I remember we were going deer hunting. And on the way to go deer hunting, we had cut down a lot of trees. We were chopping them up. We were covered in dirt. We were covered in sawdust and stuff like that. And as we were coming back, we had problems with the car. Small problem. I chopped down a tree. The tree fell in the car. But he was looking to get a new car. We walked into this dealership, and my dad said, "How much is that car back over there?" The agent, he looked at me. He looked at my dad. He just said, "It's expensive." And he walked away. He thought we couldn't afford it. My dad was a little bit angry. He walked across the street and bought a more expensive vehicle, drove it back in, gave him the finger, and we drove home. The exact same story happened to one of my best friends, who was an accountant. His father was the same thing. As he was going out taking care of things with his cottage, he looked really, really bad, walked into a car dealership, looked like he had ripped clothes all over the place, and they didn't talk to him. Usually, for a fact, the people that I know are the wealthiest, the people that I personally know that are the most powerful, do not show off at all. Almost all of them that are multi-millionaires, including people that asked me to buy them 2 different jets, usually wear ripped clothes. They don't look bad, especially when they're doing business, but sometimes their collar will be frayed a little bit. It's still perfect, it's just a small little problem. So, that I respect. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people just want the name brand. My point is not whether it's good or bad. My point is start thinking about it, because those people that are at the back of the room doing those 3D jobs, the people that you associate with those low levels are probably much more powerful than you know. You might want to have more of an open mind when you're selecting your mate, your dating partner. I know that actually for a fact too. So let's look at some facts. Anybody know how wealthy the overseas Chinese are? In Thailand, Indonesia, or Philippines? I'm going to go through one more thing here. Did you realize of the total population of Thailand, about 8% are Chinese in Thailand? 4% of people, or less than 4% of people in Indonesia are Chinese. Less than 2% of the country in the Philippines are Chinese. But they own the country. They control the country. Take a look at these details. Thailand is very nice. Everybody is associating Thailand with the best place to go vacation. Why? Because they're welcoming everybody. Come in, you buy a pina colada, you go to the beach, everything's great. Everybody's going to be very, very happy. They'll give you whatever you want. They're open-minded to everything. And that goes to ethnic backgrounds. You guys might have heard the king or the top people in Thailand have Chinese blood. They're related to Chinese by blood, by marriage. So of these 8% of people in Thailand that are Chinese, they control 80% of the wealth of the country. That's kind of shocking, right? Do you guys know this is how much money people have. This is the bottom 1% of the world. This is the top, or vice versa, the richest. Poorest. For example, we're talking about GDP. You guys have any idea? How should you draw this graph? Is it statistically like this? Is it statistically like this? Is it statistically like this? Is it 1, 2, or what's the last one? 3. Or are there people that believe in a fair society and we should all be like this? Is this number 4? What are we closer to? 2, 1, 3. If I take this red, agree. They have studied people in, almost everybody, thousands of people in the United States were studied. And they think that it goes something like that. Does that make sense to you? Anybody want to propose? So if this is number 5, anybody want to propose what is a more accurate estimate? Bottom, so this is the bottom 25%, another 25%, 25%, 25%. How should the graph go? Should this be higher or lower in reality? This is what most people think it is. This is what most people think it is in the United States. Should this be higher or lower? You think this should be higher, okay? What about section 2? So this is 25%, another 25%, 25, 25. So you think this should be a little bit lower? Lower than here? Or in between here? Any other comments? Let's try from other areas of the room. Somebody back there, guess. Here, should it be higher or lower than this? Lower. Somebody over here. Lower. Lower than this or lower than this? Lower than this. Okay. Now somebody, how about somebody at the back of the room over here? One of you ladies. Lower. Anybody? So you think this should be lower? Anybody else? Like this? Okay. Good thing you're studying management. Wow. Wow. You serious? Anybody want to comment? So you're basically, oh my God. I know I'm an old man. I know I've got a bunch of experience. I really, really, really wish you knew what I knew. I wish I could just give you my experiences. Wow, it must be amazing to live in this fantasy. The reality, it doesn't register until about here. And then it goes like that. That's reality. Bottom 40% of the country, of the world, doesn't even exist on the radar. Microscope doesn't exist. You're below the poverty line for most of the people, especially here. This top 1% owns about 25% of the country. Look at Bill Gates, come on. You're comparing yourself to people like that. Look at the Samsung family. You're comparing yourself to people like that. This is reality. Wow. It's, wow. Wow. I don't know what to say. You guys need to understand the big difference. I hope you start thinking of the big picture. I hope you start thinking of forget what you hear in the gossip. Forget just these CNN stories or what makes the news. What is the truth? How should you manage yourself? Most people work in a job until they're almost ready to die, dreaming or hoping that they're going to be able to retire and go to Paris or Italy. And then when they do retire, they don't have enough money to pay for their own health care or travel. That is usually the reality. These people are the top managers. These people are the ones that have their own companies, and they get these people working for them. Please start being proactive with your life. See how things go together. 2% of the country in Philippines owns, wow, how much is this? 2%. How do you draw this graph? How do you draw the graph to show this picture? 2% owns 70% of the country, of all of the assets, of the businesses, of the income in the country. Please start to realize these realities. You need to manage yourself intelligently, wisely. So, what we can do right now is I can continue to start talking about the Chinese management style now, or you can start doing the group project discussion. You guys have any preference? Discussion. Okay, with the discussion, we can continue right now. There's the idea of Western management is very different than the idea of East Asian management. We all know that. It's just like this. You think this, the reality is many times this. The world says this with CNN and a lot of American news. This is how you're supposed to manage. You're supposed to follow the American style, the GE style, the merit-based style, the democratic style. But should we force companies and organizations in China or Korea to follow that merit-based participative style of management, the Western management style? That is the topic. I would like you guys, for maybe 3 minutes in your group, to talk about that point. Find out what is the best comment you're going to make. Just like a debate. You got like 30 seconds, make a comment, whether you agree, you disagree, what is some proof, what is some support. If you want to use your smartphone or your computer, great. Comment on that statement. Everybody in the world should follow the Western management style. For example, in the textbook, it says Chinese style might not be very good. Should we avoid that family business style? Should we avoid, if I own a company, should I avoid giving my company to my kids? So talk about that for 3 minutes in a group now. You can work with your teams, or you can work with anybody. Just get into a group of at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 students at the most, and start talking. Now.
I think China should not follow Western management because first, basically the culture of China and Western is way different. And because based on the culture, management style will also follow the culture. And it's very hard to change what they have from the past.
Okay, anything else?
And what I have to say is also based on the cultural difference between the West and the East. For example, the Chinese and their strategies on using Guanxi, I think is very important. For example, when they went overseas, the Chinese businesses, they did very well. And most of the things they did success in was
I want to hear from everybody. We just said that the Chinese did very well. Well, the Cultural Revolution, what's your response to that? Yes? I'm just going to start putting a couple of knives or daggers into what you say. I want you to start thinking deeply. So keep going. Be short, be brief. Let's just talk about it as a group. So great, keep going.
Yes, when you go overseas, you have to put your foot into a very unknown, scary environment.
Okay.
So if you have your people, staying in your back, I think it's really great. And then I bet the Chinese use it very well.
Okay.
And China is under SOC, the state-owned enterprise. They are based on authority, so they have gone to the so I think that's important for them to take risks
Okay,
overseas.
all right, let's go to another group. We've had comments, next group.
Yeah, we think that it depends on countries to countries. I mean, among East Asian countries, for the case of Korea, our culture is based on feminism. So if the CEOs of Samsung is replaced by Westerners, the Korean people might be angry. I mean, they may feel like Samsung was like sold to Westerners or something, because we tend to buy Samsung just because it's our national brand. I mean, Korean people tend to think that. But for the case of Japan, it's totally different because Japanese are more open-minded, and they don't care about like blood, but they're more care about married face now. That's why some of the companies changed their CEOs to Westerners.
Okay.
And we can also see this in adoption too. When they adopt children, like they can't adopt no matter
Okay,
their nationality.
good.
You know?
I understand your point.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Asian cultures should, I mean, Western management style should be applied in Asian management in some respect, because Asian management style is more close to relationship oriented, and there are possibilities that even though the person who's running the company is not capable of running the company, but maybe he's got a lot of connections, so he will get the job, but he will do a bad job when he's in the position.
I didn't hear correctly. Give jobs if
The guys like
she has connections.
connections.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Give the job to somebody that's popular. Okay.
My name is Junho Kim. I think that Western culture should not, Western language style should not be forced on Eastern cultures.
Western, sorry, West.
Every culture has its own values, and I think the language style should be plugged into its own values. Because even in East Asia, there's a difference between Korea and Japan. Japanese conglomerates, they tend to succeed to people who are not with their blood related family. But for the Korean style, then we usually succeed to their like sons. But there's Samsung and
You're giving me historical background. You're talking about them. Are you saying that that's what you should do? I want to know what you should do. What are you supposed to follow? Are you supposed to continue following the Korean style? Are you supposed to continue following the Japanese style? Or is there a new, better way?
we should follow our own styles.
Do your own style. Okay? Any comments about what is the best style? What is the best own style? What should you be looking for?
I think we should just mix things up.
Mix it up. That sounds cool. Sounds fun. Okay? Anybody else, or did we already hear from all groups? The group back there? Okay. I'll summarize your comments. Go ahead. Tell us your comments.
Well, our group thinks that my group thinks that the management would not be the someone could not adopt other people management, because management should be different from time to time. While also based on that, the Chinese people cannot adapt the Western management because their cultural differences are huge, and there's a huge gap between the two nations.
Okay. Anything else?
Such as, for example,
I know culture is different. Okay.
there's an example like ERP system differences, and the Western ERP companies has been failed adopted to the Chinese market because their cultural differences are huge. and also their differences in the managing information is largely different.
Okay, this is the first time I actually hear an example. What they're saying is that the MIS failed, or more specifically, ERP failed due to this, is what they're saying. That's what you're saying, okay? Anything else? Any questions from anybody in the room about any of these? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, group comments 5. Any comments about these? Did you have your hand up at the back?
Oh, well, our group can think that, as previous group mentioned, that because of the culture difference, it's kind of like hard to follow the written management stuff. But I think that we ended up saying that they shouldn't be mixed, because if we
No.
more focus on like Guanxi style, like then the organization would be like inefficient, you know.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
I think each country has their like, they have their own management style, but I think it is kind of better to adopt another different style of management, because, for example, like in China, if you want to work in the bank, then I heard that you have to get someone from your boss or Guanxi that.
Is this what you're saying? Follow somebody else's style? You said your style is good, but follow somebody else's style?
I think it is good to just adopt some of.
Somebody else's style?
I think.
Okay. I'm just writing down what you're saying. It's good. Would you like to start talking as a group now? Let's take a look at these points.
I think bias to say to follow their Western style
It's biased to say follow this.
and or the
Follow the East.
It's biased to say follow anyone blindly. Yes, it is. You shouldn't follow something just because somebody says do it. Great. Very good point. So follow someone else. That's kind of what you're talking about. Don't mix it up. That's not what you're talking about. What else? Where's the other west? Oh, this one? So you're saying this one? Maybe if, are you saying just the west is best here? This is maybe?
Well, I think it has to be more specific, not west
Be-
and east, but like a company versus a company in east and west.
Be more specific. Okay, good. Any other comments about anything in here? What would you say, for example, number 2, line 3, number 3, line 2? What do you think would be most interesting, most valuable, or most dangerous? Yes?
I want to add more to number 1.
Sorry, we can do that, but I'd like to just evaluate this and then move on. This is the way management works, right? A CEO has ideas, but he just doesn't have time to get all information from other people, which is why this is becoming increasingly important. Yes? Is it risky? That's a good question. Is it risky to have Western style and Eastern style? That's an interesting question. That's not in here. Is it? Any questions about that? Okay. I have started to show this to several students. This is research from the last 7 years talking about the fact that many people in the world say entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial management should follow the Western style. And a lot of people also say the Chinese style is not good because it's just Confucian style, and because it's just the ruler and the ruled, and the husband over the wife, and the older over the younger. Well, this proves that has changed. This proves that now many of the top and the fastest growing companies are starting to get in professional management. Is that Western? I don't know, but it's definitely happening in Hong Kong and China. So it's definitely the current Chinese way. Is that a question you have at the back? Probably not. Any other comments here?
So we cannot say that that's Chinese, Western style,
I'm saying the top growing businesses in Hong Kong and China are getting professional managers, period. I'm not saying it's Western. I'm not saying it's somewhere else. I'm saying that is the Chinese style today. Management is definitely involving. That's my big point. Yes. Management should involve. Okay. Mixing it up, evolving. Okay. Yes. Management must be done based on national values. Is that good or bad? As long as you understand who the people working with, you must manage them using values they can work with. Soon as you start telling somebody to do something based on values that don't match their style, they can't do it well. They don't understand it. They don't have the same values. So it must match their values, but you can get the suggestions from anywhere in the world. The idea of culture is based on family. So what? I don't know who said this. It's not the main thing. The main thing is, if we're saying it now, culture is based on family. What does that have to do with management now? Do we have to manage based on family? Is it good? Is it bad?
I think it's bad.
You think it's bad?
Yeah.
I will tell you, if I make a company and I have several real estate properties, I have businesses, I will tell the world gladly they're open to my kids first. I don't care who you are, my kids get first crack at it. I don't care if they run it into the ground because I've used it, I'm gone, it's their life. Is it good? Is it bad? They have the choice, and I will encourage them to try to get the best managers possible. Those are two different things.
But I read a book that the CEO, first when he, in China, like private company, when he was small, like not in his current state where they like getting a professional manager, when they didn't have the finance to get the professional managers, the CEO used to work with his wife because as a family, because they are starting a business. But most of CEO didn't like the concept and they thought it was risky because it's not the relationship between fathers.
Some people don't like it. Okay. You don't need to make everybody happy.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that.
These are good points. We're starting to think about these. I like the fact that you're starting to think of there's many different things. There's things that you have to mix up. Don't just follow what people have been doing blindly. The next thing I'd like you to talk about for the next just 2 minutes tops, get into a group for the next 2 minutes, tell each member in the group what you think has been most educational. What was the best thing you've learned in your project so far? And if you think it's more important to say what is a big problem you have or what are some tips you can use the next 2 or 3 minutes to talk about that. Then as a group, not as a team, as a group, find those things and we will present those quickly. And you've got a maximum, maybe 30 seconds to present that. Okay? Please go. Okay. What are some of the comments that you have? Let's start with this group first. What are some of the comments that you guys have? Who's going to speak for your group? Yes. I see both of the things that she just said are work with the powerful results in your area. If there are people that are doing the same thing, benefit from that. Some people will pay you to do what they want. If there are powerful people next to you, you can collaborate with them and ride their success. That's what I hear you're saying. Great. And it doesn't have to be a professor. Professors, students, many people say don't exist in the real world. We're not in reality. Great. Next group.
We also learned some practical skills as well, like when finding information, we got SEC article from Mgmt because our topic was kind of similar, so we could save time collecting data.
Steal somebody else's stuff
No,
is what the words are in old bad schools, but modern management is called collaboration or Guanxi, which is smart. Good.
That's the previous topic.
Okay?
And
It also means they didn't do any work yet. No, I'm joking. That means they're working wisely. Working hard and working wise are not always the same thing. Good. Any other comments?
I think that's pretty.
Okay, next.
We found information from Facebook that last year the authors used it, and so we could use it. And also by looking at templates.
Great. Not only is the fact of collaboration important, but be extra smart. Realize that the people around you might be very nice, but that's a small group. Look at the bigger picture. There's hundreds of years of students that have studied these topics. Pick the best. Yes, maybe a student last year or 2 or 3 years ago has something valuable that you can use. Otherwise, again, Guanxi, it seems to be the same thing. Work with the alumni and their benefits. Great. Yes? Anything else?
Also remember that in other countries, Hyundai is having whole different system like with other. So they adopt the cultural differences from their other countries. So they make different designs for different countries. So they export the product to other countries.
Adapt according to the local conditions. Okay?
Our project is about co-branding of Samsung because there are a lot of companies like Samsung Electronics.
What's the most educational thing that you've found so far?
Because we have to interview some of people working in Samsung, but by using Guanxi, we have appointment with one of the top people in Samsung.
Okay, so how did you get the interview with this person? What is your Guanxi? You've used Guanxi to develop. How?
The top people in Samsung are best friends of my name. So I use Guanxi.
So you just have a friend. They're not family, they're just a friend, and the friends can be valuable too. Okay? Usually, geographic connections are very important. University friends are very important. Other work relationships are important. Or club relations, or middle school, high school, elementary school connections are important. Yes, but the ultimate thing is whoever's working with you, they know more of those details and they're probably the best. And of course, the top level of connection or Guanxi is usually the family. Okay? Anything else? Great.
Most people consider that the culture difference can influence a lot in the national community, but we came to conclude that actually language groupings can be really great factors because if we don't have any common language, we can't really communicate with each other, or we can't really also just well in other cultures.
So I heard you're saying that Guanxi is very, very important to talk with other people, but you're also saying just talking to them is not that important. You need to know what is the basic information. And again, more and more, this management of information is becoming important. ERP systems is very, very important. And it's not English. It's the language of that person. Talk in a way that makes that person feel comfortable so you can get the most information from them. When you're doing your surveys, make sure they're comfortable. They are the ones giving you the benefit, so make sure they are more comfortable just than you. Talk in their language. It's not always English. And as you see, more and more people are speaking more and more Chinese. The biggest language in the world is generally Chinese. Learning foreign languages helps. Great. Anything else? No? Thank you very much. We have been talking about what is the Chinese management style. We have talked about where are the Chinese, who are the Chinese, and Chinese state-owned enterprises. We're going to try to get through some of that stuff today. Again, the Chinese might not be in the spotlight. They might not be getting a lot of attention. But a lot of the Chinese, even outside of China, when people have hated them, when people have been prejudiced against them, when people have made laws to try to kill them, they have still persevered and done well. So if you think me giving you a 30-second time limit is hard, consider what it would be like if the whole country was trying to kill you, and yet you could still come to a situation where you control the whole country. How? So this is talking about some of the history from the collapse of the Qing dynasty. There was a lot of people in the 1930s and 40s, when they had internal turmoil, they left and they went to other areas. So again, we're just talking about historical conditions. There was a ban on traveling, but they still traveled. There were a lot of refugees. One of the major reasons why people started to move is because of the economic pressure. And it's not just the pressure, it might have been hard times in China, but they saw advantages. Why do a lot of the families in Korea, Japan, and China consider going to North America? Because they consider that has more opportunities. They might consider there might be better educational opportunities or business opportunities elsewhere. But think of those conditions. So an analysis of overall operation environment of the Chinese, it shows what we talked about. Some of the Chinese had hard situations, but still did very, very well. In Indonesia, we saw that there was a small percent of people in Indonesia that were Chinese, and yet they controlled a huge amount. Not as much as in the Philippines, by percentage-wise, but quite a lot. And the Muslim-based. A lot of people might not associate Muslim with Chinese. Is Chinese Muslim? No? Where does China go? China is not just Beijing, right? There are many, many, many Muslim Chinese. Make sure you understand that and you get over the old-fashioned stereotypes. In general, they invested secretly to heavy industries, or they invested secretly in just the basic products that everybody needed, and they provided these basic products at very low profit, almost for free to everybody else in the country. What is human nature? If you can get a good product for a cheap price, you will get it, and maybe you will resell it. But what does that mean? What that means is, if you're making a little bit of profit and letting somebody else do a very good business, that other person will protect you, right? Because if you die, their business dies. And it means that you can sell it to everybody. Which means you have millions or hundreds of millions of customers giving you small profit, which means huge profit. That's why the small percent controls the country. And if you invest in the strategic industries, it's even more valuable. Make sure you realize how the big picture of management goes together. Understanding, as we said earlier, banks. Banks control a lot of the money. Regardless of the true value, the popular value is banks are important. And so if you have that money and you can loan it to the banks will protect you. And if you have a lot of profit and you can be good customers of the banks, again, the banks will protect you. And if banks are tightly connected with the government, that means with Guanxi, you have the protection from the government and the banks and all of the big businesses that are your customers. If we stop for a couple of seconds and we think about what you said is important, and if we stop for a couple of seconds and think about how the Chinese got from conditions where everybody in the country wanted to kill them, there are some countries that they tried to kill Chinese just because they're Chinese, and the few people that stayed were still able to grow so valuable, they're controlling the country now. That is the reality. So what are you doing? That's history. Those are lessons. Those are facts. What are you doing with your life? Are you using the Guanxi of your alumni? Are you using the Guanxi of your family? Are you benefiting from your friends' friends? Are you thinking about the future and helping them grow so that you can grow also? Malaysia, what happened in some of these countries? In Chinese Malaysia, it had a larger proportion of total population, but they have very limited direct access to political power. Malaysia didn't allow non-traditional Malaysians to be the powerful people, the government people. So there were riots. They saw that the Chinese had power and they were growing, but there were a lot of riots. And they were killing people, killing some of these Chinese. So some of the conditions were really harsh. Chinese influence in the Malaysian economy is huge. 60% control the locally owned economy. That's one estimate. Later we have the references. Hopefully everybody that's presenting this stuff and in your papers, they'll have the references. In the Philippines, after working as cheap laborers that people think they're just quiet at the back of the room, they're just selling a pen for 1 cent profit, versus maybe a French pen or a Mont Blanc would sell for $100 profit, or $200 or $1,000 profit. What is better? Is it better to have 1 cent profit or $1,000 profit for the same thing, for a pen? A lot of people think $1,000 profit is nice. But then you think that there's the people that think you're rich just because you've got one expensive pen, and they try to attack you, or tax you, or hurt you, or take your business away, or say you're bad. You're going to be in the spotlight because you're the most expensive. Who has more profit? How many people are there in Korea that would like a 1 cent pen or 10 cent pen? 50 million people like basic pens here, versus 1, 2, 3 people might like the $1,000 pen. You have 50 million profit here. And all of these people that have businesses will help promote you. So the economic power is large because they're supporting the other local economically powerful people. The governments adopted a series of measures to prevent the Chinese from acquiring economic power. It wasn't just that they're smart business people. Some people are just prejudiced. They didn't like these people that weren't them. They didn't look like them. They didn't talk like them. They might not have acted like them. So they're ignorant and they try to be bad to them. And they might kill them. But if you work smart and with Guanxi, you can overcome these. Despite all these hardships, a study in 1982 revealed that the Filipino Chinese owned more than 30% of the top manufacturing firms, 43% of the top commercial firms, and don't forget, there's many other industries, right? So the Chinese are having these hardships, but still controlling a lot. Thailand was one of the only countries which was not hostile. As I said earlier, the Chinese top, the kings, the emperors, they have Chinese blood. Opposite of Indonesia and Malaysia. The Chinese have since regarded as full-fledged members of society. They had policies in Thailand which provided opportunities to people. There was the introduction of foreign banks. They're more open, and that's one of the reasons why the whole world will agree Thailand is a great place to go on vacation or go visit. What is Chineseness? Having the characteristics the overseas Chinese could bind themselves together. They have the Guanxi. Well, the West, as we said earlier, they say just work on your own, just have your own abilities. But so far, we haven't really talked about any specific characteristic of a person. We've talked about the whole group. Most of the group works with others. Works with the good people around them, obviously. How many people are going to work with the bad people around them? It's just not natural, right? You work with the good people around you, and if you are helping them grow, you will grow with them. So that aspect is Chinese. They've lived not in harsh environments. They have had discrimination, but they've been able to hedge their bets. They don't just invest in the $1,000 pen. They don't just invest in the one top company. Even Korea and Japan. One of the reasons why you wanted to develop Chaebol with many resources is to reduce your risk. Try developing everything, but focus on your expertise. Turn your competitiveness towards the non-Chinese majority. What is the sense of Chineseness? anybody that's from my hometown, anybody that's from my university, my high school, my middle school, those people are more like family to me. Finally, the hardship of migrating has cultivated values for economic survival, such as they must be pragmatic, they must have hard work ethic, they must be thrifty. Those are values that I described my father having, or my best friend's father having, which just by chance, they became multimillionaires. And by chance, it's also what is a description of the most successful Chinese. So there's a bunch of questions at the end of this chapter. I hope you guys are all aware of these details. We do have one more week, and then we've got the exam coming up. So these details are here. They're available for you guys. Some of the discussion questions and answers are here. I suggest you go through them. There's a video that we can talk about now if anybody's ready, or we can talk about this later towards the end of class. The next chapter, what is the Chinese organizational structure? What is the ownership? In general, yes, you can associate family ownership with most of the businesses in East Asia, China, Japan, and Canada. Sorry, China, not Canada. China, Japan, and Korea. This proves that. But you're not going to blindly follow those basic statements. You do work with the professional people around you. You hope your family, your friends, the best people around you are the best. I remember when I was very young, I used to get in a lot of trouble. I don't know if I should share some of these stories with you, but needless to say, my friends used to get in a lot of trouble. And my parents definitely tried very, very hard to have me get new friends. I wish there was a secret recipe to learn from experience. Because when I was young and ignorant, I just wanted to revolt against them. When the older people said, do this, choose better friends, I pushed against them. But now that I'm older, I realize I wish I should have followed them. You guys too. Make sure you surround yourself with the best people possible. Make sure you surround yourself with the smartest, most talented people possible. Those people will help you develop. There's common quotes. The best, most successful people in the world almost always say they're surrounded by people smarter than themselves. You don't need to be the star. Let them be the star, but work with them. And if it's family, fine. If it's professional managers you have to get in, that's new management. That is the increasing style. There is the core family, there's the close relatives, the long-term employees, distant relatives, non-related employees. It changes depending on which country you're in, but for China, business owners tend to regard the business as the private property of the core family. That does not mean that only the family runs it. They could mean, and increasingly it just means, the ownership or the shares of the company are controlled or owned by the family, but you can have other people managing it. They're reluctant to share ownership. So what? I don't have to share ownership of my company. I just pay some very smart person to come in, and I pay them very well, and I'll give them bonuses if they do a good job. That has no problem, in my opinion. I hope you understand those concepts too. I shouldn't be letting my personal beliefs bias this. Might be coming out a little bit, but please understand these details. Traditionally, what was the size of the Chinese family group? Any ideas? Ingyu, do you have a guess? What is the typical size of a Chinese family unit, Chinese family business? How big is a Chinese typical company? Typical Chinese business. 300, 3,000. What were you about to say? I heard something from you. Very big?
Yeah, it's very big.
Any other comments?
But they add their siblings and...
I'm just asking for a number. Anybody else?
2.
The answer traditionally in the textbook chapter is 8. Traditional Chinese family style, family business has 8 people. Yes, Thank you for pointing that. Why didn't you put your hand up and say that? It's right there. It says 8. Thank you for using the Guanxi and the relationships around you. Yes. The traditional privately owned enterprise hired about 8 employees on average. And that was in 1981. They are growing fast, but there's more and more people that are starting their own business everywhere in the world. A Taiwanese joke says that if you throw a rock out of the building, you're going to hit the president of some company. There is a great diversity in people for starting their own business. And that generally comes from an intelligence of knowing what is the situation around you. So what is the style? Traditionally, it was quite simple. Traditionally, before they had the technology, before they had the ERP systems, they just had the family running everything. You did whatever you could to get the job done. Simple. The older father said everything. You followed, doing whatever you could. It is changing. Life is becoming more complex now. You are outsourcing more and more. Some people predict in a few years there will be no lifelong jobs. Some people predict in the future there will only be jobs you can get for a certain period of time. Maybe it's a few hours or a few days or a few months. Develop your expertise and your Guanxi, and you should be protected. So CFB is the Chinese family business. It says traditionally there was no secondary departments. There's no special department for R&D. Everybody had to think about it. There's no traditional labor relations. Everybody just had to work hard for the family. That obviously is starting to change. There's no complete set of rules and systems. That is changing. Informal. Traditionally, there was no specified rules. You just followed what the older father said. That is definitely changing. The owner wielded the most power and made most of the decisions. They appointed family members or relatives to the most important jobs. It's definitely changing. Some of the most powerful people in the world, if you are the most powerful person in the world, if you are the very, very wealthy person, there's 2 things to consider. Either you love what you're doing and you will keep doing it, or if you want to just sit back and coast and relax, you have to get somebody else to work for you. Enjoy your life more. So, standard human concept, you can understand that things are changing. One result, the old style suppression of professionals is changing. Expert power threatens the power, patronage, and the personal relationships. If your family is doing stupid things, you send your kids to get education abroad. You send your kids to get the best education to come back to run things well, which has happened. We've passed that phase of just sending people abroad. Now they're very, very popularly coming back. A lot of you have already studied abroad and are coming back to lead your families. So there's more details that we'll be talking about with the management process of Chinese. There's many different slides. We've gone through about half of these. Next week, we will go through more of this information. Thank you very much.